Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you guys to the panelists for allowing me to be part of this, as well as SAGES. I'm happy to share my journey with you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the issues of access and console time and also platform training. All right, so this is my disclosure. So I am a speaker and proctor for Intuitive. All right, so this is a little bit about my background. So in general, when I went into medical school, I saw no robotics at all during my medical school career. There was nobody that was doing robotics. And then when I went to residency, I was training in the Army, and one of the general surgeons, colorectal surgeon, he had actually started picking up at, the SI. But that was when I was a chief resident, and I thought that that was kind of cool, but I wasn't sure if that was going to be something that I was going to do. And then I went on to do my Army training and career and serving in the military and did all of my deployments. And obviously, I didn't do any robotics during that time, but I did pretty much pick up an MIS practice. And then I got interested in doing robotics and also more in MIS, and so I decided to do a fellowship. But my fellowship, again, had no real exposure to robotics. They did actually send me to the SAGES fellowship course for robotic surgery, and I thought that that was awesome. And I met a couple of really good friends there, and I was super excited about bringing that back to my practice. And then, you know, the job market is pretty hard for bariatric surgery. So I took a job. I was pretty lucky where I am now. It was 100% robotics, 100% bariatrics. But again, at the time, there was no robotics. And actually, during my interview, they said, yeah, no one here does any robotic surgery. And I was like, oh, well, all right, we'll see about that. So why was I really so interested in it? Well, a lot of the things really just affected me personally. As you can see, I'm not a very tall person, so whenever I'm operating, I'm standing on 2 or 3 steps. So that was really kind of frustrating. And then, you know, there's a lot of studies that have been coming out about ergonomics, especially in women. And my first year working, I found difficulty in terms of closing the stapler. A lot of the devices I was having trouble with. And then eventually, probably about 6 months into my first year, I developed tennis elbow. And I was pretty panicked. I was like, this is crazy. I just got this job and now I have to be out. And so I said, well, what are some other things I could potentially try? What can I do? So I decided to decided to talk to my chair and say, hey, listen, let me consider doing this. And he said, why? And I said, well, listen, look at the obesity rates, and specifically look at Texas. We are a huge state, no pun intended, and our obesity rates are rising. All of our most of our patients that we're doing are BMI over 50. I'm standing on this step, and then look at all these papers that are coming out about robotic surgery and bariatrics, and we really need to, you know, step up our game, and we are training residents. So he said, okay, well, let's consider it. So I said, all right, and then he said, what else can robotics bring to our practice? And I said, well, look, over the past 20 years, the platform for robotics has definitely changed. There's more things that we can definitely use for our practice. There's, you know, advanced energy. The stapler is much, much better. And the cost potentially could definitely come down. And so there's applications that we can definitely utilize. We're doing, you know, gallbladders on patients with bariatric surgery, status post gastric bypass. And so, you know, utilizing things like icy green, that's not something that we could necessarily use laparoscopically, so maybe we should consider this. And he said, all right, that's fine. I'll give you a trial. You're allowed to do it. So I started, met with the Intuitive rep and decided to try and get involved and, you know, do a few cases. And then as we started building, and the program started growing and we built it, and then all of a sudden more patients started coming. So what I did was I then met with our administrator. I met, you know, regular meeting, you know, in the middle of the day, and you know, I was talking, but it was really hard for them to understand why I was so passionate about it. So I had him actually come, and that's a picture of my VP of operations. He came to the operating room and watched me do a robotic case, and he was fascinated. He was like, this patient's a BMI of 60. You know, you can treat her utilizing the robot, and then she can go home the same day. Wow, that's incredible. And so then in between, you know, kind of like they say business deals happen on the golf course, for us, it really happened during the turnover time. And so we sat down and we talked about the program, what we want to do, how we want to grow this program. And he said, yeah, I think that this is a great idea. Our steering committee had really kind of not really been doing a whole lot, but I got involved in the steering committee in order to really kind of maximize my block time. And I think that that's a really good way and a powerful way to leverage your practice if you want to increase robotics, is to get involved with the steering committee. The steering committee can also help in terms of training programs, curriculums. We set up a new training program for the residents, as well as new surgeons who wanted to train. And then all of a sudden, we went from 2 to 3 surgeons training to 6 to 7 surgeons, and expanding our huge robotic program and getting an additional robot. The other thing I think too, specific to bariatric surgery, is omni-channel marketing. And our bariatric patients tend to come a little bit more well-versed, and they kind of do a lot of research on the internet, and I think that that's super important. Having a good marketing plan, which Intuitive can help with, and your hospital can actually help with, and you can build that organically to spread the word. And the more patients that know about it, the more they're likely to start coming. So the other thing I did was, after about 25 cases or so, I started looking to make sure that this is something that we should sustain. So I looked at all the cost numbers and presented that to our administration, and I said, look, for a sleeve gastrectomy, it's about a little bit under $1,000 that I'm saving per case compared to my lap cases. And then also in terms of robotic time, the consult times are not that bad. So obviously this is something that is feasible and that we should continue doing. The other thing too is outcomes. Surgical outcomes are really the key. And for me, I looked at a small sample of my patients and compared them to my laparoscopic data, and I found that the length of stay was decreased. I had higher BMI patients, I had less readmissions, and overall, our patient satisfaction scores were going up. And I think that that leads to increased referrals, and then all of a sudden, you're labeled, the robotic person, and then all of a sudden, people are starting to they're starting to come because of that. And I think if you build a good base program, then I think that the patients will come, and those referrals are what the hospital wants. So that's really all I have. So.
Awesome.